Emma's fingers ached from the cold as she pushed the stroller across the cracked pavement toward the corner supermarket. Her coat was too thin for November, patched at the elbows, but it was all she had. Inside the stroller, 6-month-old Liam whimpered softly, his cheeks red from the chill, his tiny fists opening and closing in restless hunger. Emma swallowed hard and leaned closer. Just a little longer, baby. Mama's going to get your milk. The pouch in her pocket weighed heavy, though not with comfort. Inside were pennies, dimes, nickels, every scrap of change she had managed to find. She'd searched under sofa cushions, emptied the cup holder in the stroller, even shaken her winter boots upside down in hopes a stray coin would fall out. This, she thought bitterly, was what survival looked like, counting coins while your baby cried. Inside the store, fluorescent lights hummed above rows of products she could never afford. Emma kept her eyes down, pushing the stroller straight to aisle 9, the formula aisle. She paused, her throat tightening. The cans gleamed with bright labels, towers of gold beyond reach. She picked the smallest tin, the cheapest one, and cradled it as if it were treasure. At the register, she placed the tin on the conveyor belt and began unloading her pouch of coins. They spilled out in an avalanche of clinks and rattles. Pennies rolled to the edge of the counter. The cashier's eyebrows rose, then settled into a mask of impatience as she began counting. Behind Emma, the line grew. She felt the weight of eyes drilling into her back, the sighs, the whispers. Is she serious? A man muttered. People should plan better, a woman hissed under her breath. Emma's cheeks burned hot, her hands trembled as she pushed more coins forward. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the linoleum floor. But all she could think of was Liam's thin cries at night, his ribs showing too clearly, the fear of him growing weaker by the day. The cashier reached the halfway mark and frowned. You're short. Emma's stomach dropped. She had counted the coins 3 times at home. No, please, check again, she whispered. The cashier sighed and began recounting, coins clinking in harsh rhythm. Emma's heart pounded with every sound. She thought of begging, of putting the tin back and asking for a smaller one, though there wasn't a smaller size. Panic clawed at her chest. And then, a calm voice behind her broke the moment. I'll cover the rest. Emma froze. Slowly, she turned. A man stood behind her, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked impossibly out of place in the grimy supermarket. His tie was loosened, his coat draped neatly over one arm. He had the air of someone who belonged to another world entirely, a world of business meetings and chauffeured cars. Yet his eyes were not cold. They were steady, kind, holding hers without a trace of judgment. Before Emma could protest, he pulled out a sleek black card and handed it to the cashier. The machine beeped, the transaction approved in seconds. The tin of formula was bagged and pushed toward her. Emma clutched it to her chest as if afraid it would vanish. I can't accept this, she stammered, shame and gratitude warring inside her. The man shook his head. It's already done. Take it. Emma's lips parted, but no words came. Then he leaned closer, his voice low, almost gentle. You can't raise him alone. The sentence struck her like lightning. Her knees weakened. She turned away quickly, mumbling thanks, and hurried out of the store. Back in her small apartment, Emma mixed the formula with trembling hands. The smell filled the air, warm and sweet, and when Liam's tiny mouth latched onto the bottle, relief washed over her. His whimpers, quieted, replaced by greedy gulps. She stroked his hair, tears slipping down her cheeks. But the man's words echoed in her mind. You can't raise him alone. What did he mean? Why had he helped her? She told herself it was a fluke. She'd never see him again. Men like him didn't step into lives like hers. Yet the next morning, when a knock rattled her door, Emma's heart nearly stopped. She opened it, and there he was. The same man, though this time he wore a simple gray coat. In his hands was a grocery bag full of bread, fruit, vegetables, eggs. I'm not here to intrude, he said. I just thought you might need these. Emma's first instinct was to slam the door. Pride roared inside her, but then Liam stirred in his crib, beginning to cry, and she felt her defenses crumble. She stepped aside. The man set the groceries on her small kitchen table. I'm Daniel, he said. Daniel Carter. She blinked. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. I'm Emma, he nodded, glancing at Liam in the crib. He's beautiful. Emma pressed her lips together. Why are you doing this? Daniel hesitated before answering. Because I've been where you are. Not me personally, but my mother. She raised me alone after my father left. I remember the coins, the hunger, the look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. His jaw tightened. She shouldn't have had to do it alone. Neither should you. Emma's breath caught. She wanted to tell him she didn't need saving, that she was fine. But the lie tasted bitter. She wasn't fine. She was drowning. Over the following days, Daniel became a presence in her life. He brought diapers, clothes, fresh food. But he never acted superior, never made her feel small. Instead, he asked questions, about her dreams, her skills, what she wanted for Liam's future. Emma confessed she had studied business administration before her pregnancy but had dropped out when her boyfriend abandoned her. Since then, she had been scraping by, walking dogs, cleaning houses, babysitting, anything that paid. Daniel listened carefully. Then, one evening, he said, I run a company downtown. We have a training program for single parents. Flexible hours, childcare included. I can put your name forward. Emma shook her head. I can't take handouts. This isn't a handout, he said firmly. It's an opportunity, one you deserve. She hesitated, but the look in his eyes, steady, unwavering, warmed something inside her. She agreed. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest and brightest of her life. Emma woke before dawn, fed Liam, dropped him at the daycare Daniel had arranged, then hurried to training. She studied late into the night, pushing herself harder than ever. Slowly, she began to believe she was capable of more than survival. And through it all, Daniel was there, not hovering, but steady. Sometimes he stopped by with groceries, sometimes with toys for Liam, sometimes just to listen when Emma felt overwhelmed. One evening, after a long day, Emma found him sitting on the floor with Liam, building towers from wooden blocks. Liam's laughter filled the apartment, pure, bright, unburdened. Emma leaned against the doorway, tears welling in her eyes. You're good with him, she whispered. Daniel looked up, smiling. He reminds me of myself at that age. Except, he has you. That makes all the difference. Emma swallowed past the lump in her throat. Why me, Daniel? You could have walked past that day in the store. Why stop? He grew quiet. Then he said, because I saw my mother in you. And because someone once told me that success means nothing if you don't use it to lift others. Emma's tears spilled over. She crossed the room and sat beside him. For the first time in months, she felt something she had thought was gone forever. Hope. Months passed. Emma completed her training, earned a position at Daniel's company, and began building a future she once thought impossible. The eviction notices stopped. Her fridge was no longer empty. Liam grew stronger, chubbier, full of giggles and light. But more than the material changes, something deeper shifted. Emma no longer felt invisible. No longer felt like she was carrying the weight of the world alone. One evening, as she tucked Liam into his crib, she thought back to that day at the supermarket. The shame, the fear, the humiliation of counting pennies in front of strangers. And then the voice behind her, calm and steady, I'll cover the rest. She turned and saw Daniel watching her from the doorway, his expression soft. You did it, he said quietly. No, Emma replied, her voice breaking. We did it. He stepped closer, laying a hand gently on her shoulder. Remember, Emma, you were never meant to do this alone. And she believed him. For the first time, she truly believed him. Emma would never forget the girl who once paid with pennies. But she was no longer that girl. She was a mother with hope, a woman with a future, and a child who would grow up knowing love, stability, and possibility. And all because a stranger in a supermarket saw her struggle, stepped forward, and said the words that changed everything. The supermarket's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above Emma's head as she pushed her son's stroller down the narrow aisles. The wheels squeaked, echoing through the polished linoleum floors. 6-month-old Liam stirred restlessly, his tiny fists balling and unballing in the thin blanket. His whimpers tugged at her heart like a chain. Almost there, sweetheart, she whispered, stroking his cheek. Mama's going to get your milk. Her hands trembled as she clutched the cloth pouch in her coat pocket. The coins inside were heavy, not in value, but in shame. Nickels, dimes, quarters, and more pennies than she wanted to admit. She had scoured every drawer, every corner of her crumbling apartment to find them. It wasn't enough for groceries. It wasn't enough for bills. But maybe, just maybe, it would buy a can of formula. At the baby aisle, her chest tightened. Towers of formula cans gleamed on the shelves, stacked high, their bright labels promising health and growth. She scanned the prices, her breath quickening. Too high, all too high. Finally, she found the smallest container, the cheapest, and lifted it with hands that shook. At the register, she unloaded her pouch onto the counter. The cashier's expression faltered as the mound of coins spilled across the surface. They clinked and rolled, loud in the silence of the growing line behind her. "Sorry," Emma murmured, head down. The cashier began counting, sighing audibly as the line grew longer. Emma could feel the eyes on her back. She heard the impatient whispers. "Seriously, who pays like this anymore? Some people just don't plan their lives." Her cheeks burned, her chest tightening as if the air itself were condemning her. Still, she forced herself to stand tall, focusing on the tin of formula. Liam needed it, nothing else mattered. The cashier stopped. "You're short," she said flatly. Emma's stomach dropped. "No, no, please, count again," she begged, voice shaking. The cashier started over, coins clinking like hammer blows. Emma's vision blurred. She thought of begging, of asking to return the tin, of running out in humiliation. And then, a calm male voice from behind broke the tension. "I'll cover the rest." Emma froze. Slowly, she turned. A tall man stood there, dressed in a charcoal suit that seemed out of place among the tired shoppers. His presence radiated calm authority, yet his eyes held no judgment, only quiet resolve. He handed the cashier a sleek black card, the gesture smooth, practiced, effortless. The machine beeped. The bag with the formula slid across the counter. Emma grabbed it, hugging it to her chest. Her throat worked, words tangled between shame and gratitude. I can't accept this." The man's voice was gentle, steady. "It's already done. Take it." She shook her head, struggling. But before she could speak again, he leaned slightly closer, his eyes locking with hers. "You can't raise him alone." The words cut through her like a blade, terrifying, disarming, true. Emma fled the store, her heart racing, Liam's cries filling the air. But the stranger's words followed her home, echoing louder than her footsteps. Part 2. The stranger returns. The next morning, a knock rattled Emma's door. She froze. Hardly anyone visited her. The landlord didn't knock anymore, he taped notices instead. Opening it cautiously, she gasped. It was him, the man from the supermarket. He wasn't wearing a suit this time. A gray coat hung loosely on his shoulders, and in his hands was a bag full of groceries, bread, eggs, fruit, milk. "I don't mean to intrude," he said. "I just wanted to make sure you and your son had enough." Emma's pride flared. She wanted to slam the door, to tell him she didn't need charity. But then Liam cried from the crib, and her shoulders sagged. She stepped aside. The man set the groceries on her tiny kitchen table. "I'm Daniel," he said, offering his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. "Emma." His gaze softened as he looked toward Liam. "He's beautiful." Emma's lips tightened. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel's expression grew distant. "Because I know what it's like. Not me, but my mother. She raised me alone. I remember the coins, the hunger, the way she sacrificed everything for me. She shouldn't have had to do it by herself. Neither should you." Emma swallowed hard, her defenses faltering. Over the next weeks, Daniel appeared often, never overbearing, always respectful. He brought food, diapers, warm clothes. He asked Emma about her life, her dreams, her skills. At first, she resisted, ashamed of needing help. But slowly, she began to open up. She told him about the college program she had left when her boyfriend abandoned her. About cleaning houses and walking dogs to survive. About how she wanted Liam to have more, to grow up believing the world could be kind. One evening, Daniel said quietly, "I run a company downtown. We have a program for single parents, training, flexible hours, childcare. I can put your name forward." Emma shook her head, panic flashing. I don't want a handout." "This isn't charity," Daniel said firmly. "It's investment. In you, in Liam." His words sank deep. For the first time in months, Emma allowed herself to hope. The training was grueling, but Emma threw herself into it. She studied at night, worked by day, and slowly proved herself. Daniel was there, not just as a benefactor, but as a steady presence. He played with Liam when she was exhausted, encouraged her when doubt gnawed at her, reminded her she wasn't alone. One night, after tucking Liam into his crib, Emma found Daniel waiting at the table. She sat across from him, her heart heavy with unspoken gratitude. "Why me?" she whispered. Daniel smiled softly. Because someone once helped my mother when she needed it most. Without that, I wouldn't be here. Success means nothing if you don't lift others with it. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. For months, she had carried her burden in silence, convinced she was alone. Now, sitting across from Daniel, she felt something she thought she had lost forever, hope. Daniel reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You're not alone, anymore, Emma, and neither is Liam. The words filled the room with warmth, replacing despair with possibility. Emma squeezed his hand back, her voice breaking. Thank you, she whispered. And she meant it, not just for the formula, not just for the food or the job opportunity, but for seeing her, for reminding her she was more than a girl with pennies in her pocket. The girl who once counted coins in shame was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to live. And it all began with a stranger who stood behind her in line and said 7 words that changed everything.